When a gentleman of breeding finds himself staring at a blank spreadsheet, there is one question that inevitably enters his mind. Can I make Excel emulate the storytelling voice of Jane Austen in a custom-built generative AI? The answer is yes, and today you'll learn how to do it, as Excelopithecus goes full merchant ivory. The algorithm I've chosen to create RoboJane is called a Markov Chain Monte Carlo. To make it easy to explain, I've chosen a relatively small one as a warm-up. This particular version of the Markov Chain Monte Carlo was created in the 1970s to simulate Tourette's syndrome. I've made a few small tweaks to it, including cleaning up the language to suit the genteel audience of this channel. The way the Markov Chain Monte Carlo works is it's a system of word connections. The start word is here and doesn't contain any word at all. And from the start position, there is an 11% chance that the next word will be loving, an 87% chance that the next word will be love, and a 2% chance that the word will simply be cat without any other words in the statement. If the word is love, then there's a 33% chance that it'll simply end there with an exclamation mark, a 0.04 probability that it'll be love you, and there are a few more combinations. The interesting word here is loving, because it has a 50% chance of looping, loving, and a 50% chance of ending in the termination word cat. And we're now going to try to build it in a spreadsheet. In this spreadsheet, you can see that I've transferred all of the word probabilities into a table and typed them up. The $ represents the initial position, so there's no word there. And you can see it's got 3 options for next word: love, loving, and cat. And to make the Monte Carlo run, I've had to give it a cumulative probability. You can check out my video on the sum function as a substitute for SUMIFs to see how I did this formula. And this is pretty critical to the functioning of the algorithm. It's got starts at 87%, adds 11, and finally adds the last 2%. And all of these cumulative probabilities should terminate at 1 or 100%. Now we just need to build an algorithm that stitches them together. And we're going to start small. We're going to use XLOOKUP, and we're going to have to make it a double XLOOKUP. So a double XLOOKUP starts with the character 1 as the lookup value, and then it searches for truth values for 2 conditions and multiplies them together. In this case, the first condition is that the start word should equal $, and the probability should be equal to or over, we can make the starting probability 90%. And what you will see here is true, 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 false, 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 false. True, 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 these equal $, these don't. And in this column, you will also see, as a preview, a bunch of trues and falses. So 0.87 is not equal to or over 0.9, but the other 2 are. When you multiply them together, you get a bunch of zeros and ones, which you can see in the preview here. 0, 1, 1, and the rest zeros. So XLOOKUP is going to go for the first 1 in that array. In this case, the first 1 will be loving. So we now simply need a return column, which is next word. And voila, loving. Next step is to scale this up. So we want to make this recursive that returns a whole string of words, or a whole sequence of them. And we can do this with the scan function. So I've made a few other videos using it. In this case, our start value should be the $. And in terms of the random probabilities, because this should be a random number between 0 and 1, we can use rand array. This will also decide the maximum number of words, so we can make this rand array 20. And lambda AB, A stands for the old value, and B stands for the new value that's coming in from this array. So B16, B27 equals A, and E16, E27 equals B. Return C16, C27. And we can now start locking these down because we're going to be dragging this formula. And as a final trick, we're going to have an if error. So just in case, it'll return nothing. And that'll be our scan function. And let's close it. So in this case, it's just returning love. But we can now start stitching it together. So I've opened a let function. I've named the scan function SC, short for scan. And we want to use text join. And the delimiter will be a space. Text join, and the second input is 1, ignore empty cells. So it's not going to add any of these blank cells to the final value, and SC. And you can see what happens. Love my cat. And let's keep dragging it down and generating a few more of these Tourette's tics. Love my loving, loving, loving cat.
Loving cat. Love my cat. Love my cat. Love. Cat. Loving cat. Love. Love. Love my cat. Loving cat. Love my loving cat. Loving cat. Love my loving, loving, loving cat.
For my source data, I chose 2 of Jane Austen's novels, Censored Sensibility and Mansfield Park. There are relatively good digitizations of them on Project Gutenberg, which is where I stole them from. I wanted my Monte Carlo to treat punctuation marks as words. So I needed to get a table to find all of the non-alphabetic characters in the texts, isolate them, and put spaces before and after them to separate them from other words. However, English unfortunately uses quite a lot of punctuation marks for contractions like can't, won't, shan't, and also periods at the end of honorifics like Mr. and Mrs. So I had to be extra careful with those when I built a table of replacements and a multi-replace function using scan. My solution was to use placeholder characters. These replaced all of the contractions and honorifics and then restored them after the other punctuation marks had spaces before and after them. The text was finally clean and ready to process. It is a truth universally acknowledged that Jane Austen's sentence structures are considerably more sophisticated than Tourette's. So I was going to have to use double words for the Monte Carlo, each 2 words followed by each next 2 words. However, Power Query makes this relatively easy to do with index columns. In Power Query, I began with every paragraph in the novels given its own cell. I started by converting the text into lowercase for reasons I'll discuss soon, and added a $sign at the beginning of each paragraph in a custom column. I then split the text vertically by the space delimiter, creating one long sequence, word by word. From there, I created an index column and a bunch of table joins and merged the text into columns titled double and next double. I should note that if you want an M custom function that does everything I'm doing here in one go, you can check out my video description, which has a GitHub link to the function. My next task was to compute the raw probabilities. I did a group by count of each double as the denominator, and a group by count of each double plus each next double as the numerator. I turned these into a percentage. My dataset wasn't exactly small, so to compute the running total probabilities, I needed to piggyback off Power BI. This was the reason why I lowercased all of the text, because Power BI is not case sensitive, and it would overcount if I didn't do that. I pasted the script from Advanced Editor into Power BI's version of Power Query, and tested it with the window function for running totals in DAX Query View. Because DAX Query View can't show all of the results, I then made it a calculated table and pasted it into Excel for the final stage of RoboJane. I now had all the materials I needed to give my creation life. My first step was turning the double next double data into a structured table, which I named transitions. That done, I decided to make a table of paragraph openers. I used filter to retrieve all of the doubles that began with a $, and unique to get rid of any duplicates. I pasted the results as values over themselves and made another structured table with initiators as the column name. My algorithm was pretty much the same as the one I built in the Tourette simulator warm-up. Its biggest difference was that instead of starting with a $, it picked a random initiator from the initiator list. Because its outputs were still doubles, I got text before to extract the word before the pipe delimiter before joining the results together. Finally, I turned it into a custom function and set it up on a new tab. RoboJane was ready to run. If you want to download your own copy of RoboJane, check out my GitHub repository link in the video description. For now, I will leave you with my handiwork in all of her magnificence.
Soon he would take nothing. She will never have selected Fanny Price in love with your sister suffering from that tree. Should you like London? Again.
They were never unwelcome to Miss Crawford.
Need not take place very soon, joined by the time may come when Sir Thomas's return. I like to sit with you, I no longer with the saving of you with this wind, resisting it with all her fatigues, and sent him on.
Very particular point.
He shared it, unpleasant to me. Why is not that you could see its influence?
On his return. Must be so very desirable, for Mrs. Price was out today for above 100 miles off, instead of only waiting to know which way to look a little while Miss Dashwood now took pains to remove one article from his voice was watched.
And sent him on very particular point.
The latter took her up. She spoke what she already knew herself, whose knowledge of what the others to have his tea in comfort afterwards. There seemed with him one of you as well regulated as she wrote very comfortably together on the terrace by Edmund to forget that in spite of herself. But in this world the penalty is less equal to your own improved plan that may ever have to wait for Mr. Yates's being invited to take such a token of friendship that can serve them best, or their uncles and aunts. She will grow sober by degrees to all his money to his meaning anything seriously. But you should listen to him this moment going. To say for my soliloquy, such was the object of that poor
surprise to me in the vestibule, was too strong in her sister on this unexpected meeting. But you are supposing it is your way of the sofa, as anybody in England would take their chance. We looked down as certain that Willoughby were then situated. The whole coach, full of something to write letters, and sleep seeming to invite them directly to their wishes to their room on their part, that might otherwise have taken place about 12 miles from London, but to trifle with further. Maria was just then. You have set my heart speaking to her great obligation, which will never have selected Fanny Price in love with Marianne Dashwood was upon the
worthless hussy.
And your having so respectable and well judging a friend last September, just now received it just released from the uncle who had looked up to my own eldest son with the saving of you as Miss Steele, was the time when it all fair and honourable, so indulgent a mother whose character was consequently cast. He shared it, unpleasant to me the real state of his West Indian property. No wonder that men are very wrong.
Wrong.